Alright, I've got the switch back in. Check the continuity on the switch. I now have it in the on position, so hopefully between this wire and one of these two wires we'll have continuity. There it is. Shut the switch off, Aiden. There it is, off. On, off. Okay. So, black is going to be the common, and then this is going to be for the ignition. So I guess I'll hook that up while I know what it is. So this plug, this smaller plug with only the two wires going to it, can unplug from this. But the reality is the other wire, the lower one, goes right over to the pickup coil and all that stuff. So all of these wires I've permanently connected so that if I want to take the motor back out, I can just unplug these two plugs. But because this wire has to go to the cart, I want to put a disconnect on just this one single wire. The wire just about reaches right there. I could just splice it, crimp it right there, but then I wouldn't have a way to disconnect it. And the wire's just a little bit short now because I had to cut back this melted wiring. And this whole part of the frame right here, because of the shock absorbers and the suspension, actually moves up and down. So I want to give this a little bit more wiring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crimp on an extra length of green wire, and then on this end of this extra green wire where I have it match up to here, I'm going to use one of these type of connectors here that actually can be taken apart if necessary. So next up I wanted to check the start circuit. The red button up at the top there. So since through process of elimination it must be using ground and this wire to complete the start circuit. So theoretically, if we push the brake switch and we press the red button, we should have continuity here. We get nothing, and I can see that the brake switch, which is down here, is pretty much toast. It actually doesn't want to move at all. Hey, you step on the brake. Do that again. So I don't know what's supposed to actuate that switch. Oh, it's supposed to be a rod that goes over to the switch, because the switch is way back here, and the thing that I feel on here that feels like it's supposed to move it is way the hell up here. But I think it can be slid along this rod. So alright, so up underneath here, can't really see it in the dark, but there's a collar right here that feels like it's got a locking screw on it that I think you move back so that I think it pushes on this pin of this switch right here. Look in there at that switch right there. My finger's on the tip of the pin right there, but that pin doesn't move at all. It's like it's seized. This cap comes off the back and the wires go directly into the switch, so you can't unplug it there. There's a quick disconnect right here, so I can disconnect that switch and bypass it. And there must have been one here that somebody cut off, and they just, look at, they just spliced the wire, twisted the wires together, and they're completely uncovered and they've all corroded. So that's just wonderful. All right, so I just removed this plastic nut, and that allows me to remove the switch, and you can see what's left of the switch here. So that's interesting. There's a little tiny hole right there in the switch and the rod. So I wonder if there was some kind of a linkage or something, or a spring maybe. Step on the brake again. Yeah, I bet you that's what it is. I bet you there's a spring supposed to run over from that collar that I see underneath there and goes into that hole right there. So that means you get to pull out on that to engage the switch. So I didn't bother videoing it, but I took this switch apart. There's actually a couple of little, you take this plastic cover off and there's a couple of little indentations there, and you can actually take the guts of the switch out. This was all rusted inside here. A ton of oxide powder came out. The brass areas were completely oxidized. I cleaned everything up, lubed it up, put it all back together. Spring was still pretty good. Still a little crunchy, but now electrically it works. Alright, so now I've spliced this wire that was just stuck together. Put the switch back in. I don't have a spring yet that goes from that rod over to the brake linkage, so I'll just have to manually pull it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold these wires on here, and I'm going to pull this rod out. All right, press the button.
I am.
You are? Mm-hmm. All right, so I hooked everything up. It still wasn't working, and then I looked under the dash and realized that the wires were off from the push button. So let's try this again. All right, so I'll pull the brake switch. Now press the button. Yeah, still something wrong. Could be the switch itself. That's easy enough to test. I guess we'll start there. Actually, what I'm curious to see is whether or not... All right, hold that. That should be the ground. So that should be this one. And it is. So it's looking like that switch isn't working. So far, we're 2 for 2 on switches that weren't working.
This one has the bolt on it.
And it's about to be 3 for 3. So let's just hold these wires on the... Hold these wires on the 2 connections on the switch now. Got it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, we got to take that switch out. What the hell? How are you supposed to get that off? That nut's recessed in there. Well, I think this is the only switch that I'm not going to be able to do anything with. This is a really sealed unit by the looks of it. It's definitely bad. Nothing happens when you press it. Okay, so this switch, I tried squirting quite a liberal amount of contact cleaner down inside there, and it made no difference. So this switch is kaput, and since I'm going to have to get a new one anyways, I am going to, just for the heck of it, see whether or not I can actually pop this red button out. But the plastic looks really weather faded, and I just think it's going to be too brittle. I think it's going to probably just crack. Might not even be made to come out this way at all. You know, this might, by design, it might be that this is supposed to, the button goes in from the back during assembly and that's it. You know, you don't take it apart at all. And they probably put this plastic part in, and then they have a machine probably come down and crimp this ring right here. There's nothing to indicate that this is made to come apart afterwards. I think if I get this, if this comes out, it's going to go flying. But I don't think it's going to come out. Yeah, it's not going to come out. This is a 1 amp 250 volt AC momentary contact switch. I'll tell you what it looks like. It looks like a doorbell switch. Almost. I wonder if I stuck a doorbell switch in there, how long it would last, how long it could take the current. I mean, you're only flowing, it's only the current that flows through the coil on the solenoid. It's not the full starter current. Hey guys, so this is the carburetor that was with the Yerf Dog go-kart when we got it, and you know, it's been out in the weather obviously a lot. It's got a lot of signs of heavy corrosion, and even though it looks pretty bad, I was actually gonna try and rebuild this carburetor, and I haven't even taken the bowl off and looked at the condition of the float or anything like that. But you know, down in the throat it's dirty, but it doesn't look that as heavily corroded. So I thought maybe I could save this carburetor. The big problem with this carburetor is right here. What goes here is the electric choke module, and it's an electric solenoid that pulls a pin up that goes down inside here, and actually what it does is it opens up a port that allows raw fuel to flow in and really richen the mixture and have the effect of what a choke would do. You know, typically a true choke would actually be a butterfly that actually restricts the flow of air coming in, and which would cause the vacuum of the intake of the engine to draw more fuel up. and have a really rich mixture that way. This is a little bit different. So even though they call it an electric choke, I believe, it's really not really a choke in that sense. It's not choking off the airflow coming in. It's just really richening the flow of fuel, the air-fuel mixture. Anyways, you could buy the electric choke, okay? The problem is all of the replacement electric chokes that I looked at online look like they're missing. They look like they just come with the electric choke part and not this top piece that is missing from this. So my concern was, if I buy like the electric chokes that I found online cheap were like $8, if I buy that and then it comes in and I don't have all the pieces to put this together, I'm going to be stuck with an electric choke I can't use on this carburetor. And then also I'm going to need a carb rebuild kit more than likely for this. So now you add those two things together and it's like, well, okay, I'm going to pay like probably about $20 in parts to take a chance on rebuilding this carburetor. And the only reason I wanted to maybe rebuild this carburetor was because I noticed that this carburetor is made in Japan, so it's probably actually pretty decent, decent quality. But I decided to bite the bullet and go to plan B, which is there are plenty of aftermarket cheap Chinese carburetors for these GY6s on eBay. And I mean cheap. I mean free shipping included. I paid $18.19, I think, for this carburetor, which came in today. And look at the shipping job that somebody did on this. So I wanted to open this on camera because this came from a seller in California. It might even be e-packet from Japan, from China or whatever, but this box is beat to hell. This is one of those deals where I think it was FedEx was responsible for part of the way, and then the post office maybe for the other part. But you can see the box is really messed up. And even though probably nothing fell out of it, I can reach right in there and I can touch the carburetor. There's barely any wrapping on it, which I'm going to show you in a second. But my main concern is the fact that it's been so beaten up. It tells me this thing's been thrown around. The box is crushed here. I'm even wondering if this tape right here was put on after the fact. So I don't know if this ended up getting crushed. I don't know if it was like this before it shipped. It came from China this way. But you can feel the metal is able to hit. So if this was dropped on a hard surface, I'm worried about the carburetor being damaged. So let's take a look. So they stuck it in this box with just this thin, I mean really thin, bubble wrap bag. Ridiculously thin. And the good news is, though, there's no pieces of plastic or anything falling off, so it looks like it's all there. All right, so let's take a look at what we got here. So this is that electric choke assembly that I was worried about. Okay, so like I was saying, apparently if you buy a replacement electric choke, what you get is you get this cord assembly and this plastic part right here, but I don't think you get this metal retaining clip or whatever that is right there. I may be wrong, but I didn't want to take a chance and I couldn't tell from photographs. So we've got a vent here. All right. This actually looks like a pretty good matchup for the old one. Starting from this side here. Looks pretty good. So the only thing we're going to reuse off of this carburetor is this clamp right here. And turns out this hose right here that goes to this device here, which is I think an anti-backfire valve, or I forgot what they call this, but this has to do with doing something to help minimize backfiring on
deceleration, I think. Well, apparently, I think by design, this hose is supposed to go to the nipple that's on the intake manifold. So when we're putting this on the cart, I think that's where this is going to attach. I read online, I don't remember, I think a lot of guys just end up blocking this off. So this is the bowl drain, I know that. This is the vent. This just came off. Great job. Great fit that is right there, huh? Look at that. Ooh. No barb on there, it's just a straight fitting, so. So I managed to pick up this switch off of eBay, dirt cheap. It's a momentary contact switch, and they claim that it's waterproof. Has a little bit of an O-ring on there in it. I just checked, it does fit this hole, but instead of having spade terminals on the back, it's actually got little pillow blocks, or little terminations with the screw terminals. The kind that you stick the conductor in the hole, and then the screw screws down and clamps down onto the wire. So I can't use these little spade terminals here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these wires and strip them. The wire seems like it's going to be long enough to allow me to do that. Alright, so we get the switch installed. So actually we can see, I think I'll get my starter charger over here, use that as a battery eliminator, and we can test the starting circuit, make sure it cranks, and then we can also see if there's spark.